and when we run the game once more, we see that the anchored part is deleted when we delete Fred, allowing the cannonball to fly away, again. It's at this point that you might realize that the rest of this video will be spent designing a mechanism that allows us to delete Fred on command by using a button. If you think you know how to make one, I encourage you to give it a shot on your own, but if you would first rather see how I do it, keep watching. At this point, I will add a teleporter outside the door and set its offset to -500, with the intention of teleporting Fred into the void. If we run the simulation and delete the door, we see that Fred goes off the conveyor and into the teleporter, where it lands in the void and is destroyed, destroying the anchored part in the process and allowing the cannonball to fly away, just as planned. Now we just need a mechanism for deleting the door. To do this, I will parent the door to a part that contains a body armor script. Here, I'm just using the green Fred block as a base to make our body armor part, because it's convenient. Here, I will group the body armor part and the door together and parent the door to the body armor part. Here I will add a body armor script to the body armor part. Make sure that the body armor script's destroy on pickup property is set to true, meaning that there's a check mark in the box that says value. The body armor part will now destroy itself when it's touched by a player or an NPC. Because the door is parented to the body armor part, it will be destroyed as well, releasing Fred, who, carried by the conveyor at the bottom of the chamber, will touch the void teleporter, destroying him. And because the anchored part is parented to Fred, it too will be destroyed, and boom, there is now nothing restricting the cannonball from moving and it flies away. Here I am just adding a regen button, which you will see why in a moment, is because I'm going to make it regen an NPC on top of the body armor part to make it destroy itself. An NPC is just a model that contains a part and a humanoid. Here I am just making the NPC. Now I will group the regen button with the NPC. Here I am adding a teleporter inside of the body armor part so that the NPC is teleported into the void after the body armor part is deleted. This is important because in the next step, we will add a mechanism to regenerate the body armor part, and we don't want the NPC to make it delete itself again, twice. So, we need to get rid of it. Last but not least is to make Fred into an NPC and add a regen button to regenerate the door when Fred leaves the chamber. Here I am just adding the regen button, then I will parent the regen button to the same model as the body armor part. A tip for when you're adding the regen button: pull, or scale it away from the door a little bit, by about half of Fred's width, so that Fred has the chance to pass over the edge of the conveyor, before triggering the regen button, and regenerating the door. Make sure that your regen button has its can collide property set to false, meaning that there is not a checkmark. Here, I will parent the regen button to the same model containing the body armor part. Here I am making Fred into an NPC, by simply adding a humanoid to his parent model, so that when he leaves the chamber he will trigger the regen button to replace the door. This whole process is important, because if you had more cannonballs, and, subsequently, more Freds in the chamber, it would void all Freds and fire all the cannonballs at once if the door was not replaced. Now, when we run the simulation, we see that the cannon fires its first shot automatically and then replaces the door. That's normal. The reason it fires its first shot automatically is because the body armor part, which is responsible for deleting the door, already has an NPC placed over it, which will fall when the game runs, so the body armor part will delete the door. A Fred will fall out and get voided, subsequently destroying an anchored part and letting a cannonball loose. Simply, now, because one cannonball will automatically be released when the game runs, we will need more cannonballs. So, I will group the cannonball with Fred's parent model, give this new model a name, and then duplicate it a few times. Here, I have already grouped the cannonball with Fred's parent model and am giving the new model a proper name. Here, I am duplicating it. Here I am separating the cannonballs, and their anchored parts, from each other, just giving them an offset from one another. This is because, if you don't, all cannonballs will share each other's anchored parts, because their surface welds will line up exactly. The result is that no cannonballs will fire until all Freds have been deleted and then they will all fire at once. The reason you're seeing a Fred, green part, outside the chamber and resting on the conveyor is for 3 reasons, which I will fix in a minute. Firstly, the size of the door is too big, it allows 2 parts to leave the chamber when it opens because it is twice the height of Fred. The optimal size for the door is just slightly taller than the size of the part intended to fit through it. In this case, Fred has a height of 1, so anywhere between 1.2 and 1.6 is adequate. Secondly, because all the Freds are clipping inside each other, they will explode out of the door the moment it is opened. To fix this, I will space them throughout the vertical space of the chamber, so that they stack on top of one another. And, thirdly, the last reason, which doesn't necessarily need fixed, as it is more of a bystander than a culprit, in this case, is that the debounce on the teleporter was too long. Long enough for a Fred to swizzle itself across it to rest on the other side faster than the teleporter could reactivate and void it. Fixing that, however, is somewhat pointless, though you'll see me do it anyway. The real issues were the first 2 that I mentioned. Stay tuned until I apply the mentioned fixes. Till then, you will see bugs. Here, I am stacking the threads. Here, I am resizing the door. Now that all fixes have been applied, the cannon should work as intended. While the debounce on the regen button that regenerates the NPC may be used to determine fire rate and can be set to almost anything, the debounce on the regen button that regenerates the door should always be, perhaps, a fifth of a second shorter than the button that regenerates the NPC. If the two regen buttons have the same debounce, you'll notice that the one that regenerates the door doesn't re-enable before the NPC one. So you may want to give it a shorter debounce so that it re-enables sooner, otherwise, problems may occur. Finally, I will, once more, demonstrate that the body thrust allows the cannonballs to fire in any direction that they are facing by rotating all the cannonballs, and anchor parts, by an arbitrary amount of degrees, and then testing the game again. This video didn't cover a lot of things that some people might want to do with cannons, like make them destroy stuff, or attach them to a vehicle. It also didn't cover solutions to some of the shortcomings of this cannon design, such as the fact that the first cannonball fires on its own. I may, in the future, make another video discussing some of these topics. But to spare myself the trouble of making a whole new video to explain this, because I know this is probably the coolest part of making a cannon, here's a brief synopsis of how to attach a cannonball to a car. Unanchor the anchored parts and weld them to the vehicle of your choice, along with the regen button. Make sure the cannonballs are welded to nothing else but the anchored parts, which aren't technically anchored anymore, but whatever. That's really it. Honestly, it's pretty simple. Then run the game and try it out. That's it for now, bros. See you later.